am Gary Young, CEO and founder of Avela Global, one of the sponsors. Thank you. And I did a switcheroo, and you didn't get the memo, but I changed the talk. So this is going to be different, and I hope you appreciate it, because I think Keynote should be about inspiring people and not dissemination of information. So I talked to the organizers, and they agreed, and that was all supposed to get changed, but you didn't get the change. So a different talk, and I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you find some inspiration. So my talk is about spark of a founder. So when I was asked to give this keynote, I thought, what do people think a founder is? And I asked lots of different people, and I got lots of different answers. And I had my own idea, so I just want to answer this fundamental question. And actually, I can actually spend 35 minutes on this topic, and you're going to see why in just a minute. So, as any good presenter would do, when asking a question, I went to ChatGPT, and I went to Grok, and I went to Google, and I said, what is a founder? I think I got 30 responses for what a founder is. And I would share a couple of these with you. Someone who births an entity from nothing. That sounds godlike, doesn't it? And founders, as we all know, we're just people. And that's one definition. Another one, come on, there it is. The architect of possibilities. Now that's kind of romantic and I think a little closer to what a founder might really be. But I just have this problem with people calling themselves founders because they registered a company with the local government. I think it's more than that. I think to define the founder is to define the founder's journey. There we go. Okay, the founder spots the gap in the world and builds bridges to cross the gaps. And I think we're getting closer to what I believe a founder is. A founder can see those places in the market that nobody else sees. And he takes advantage of that and leverages that. And he or she builds the company. And I think this is getting closer to what a founder is. I saw this one, I thought it was harsh. The founder is the survivor where others would be crushed. And I think we're getting into that superhero sort of territory, the Marvel universe here. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Yes, founders are under tremendous pressure, but it's a journey, and you learn along the way, and you learn how to deal with the pressure, and that's part of being a founder, but it's not who a founder is. Create through will by activating what is encoded in our human DNA. Now, I particularly like this one because I think this is closer to what a founder is, and we're going to get into more detail. This is one I like. Creation through vision and action. Again, this is what a founder does, but it's not what a founder is. And that's the barrier I'm trying to break. We keep hearing what a founder does, but we want to know what a founder is. So these are the two statements that I came across that I really want to focus on. The founder spots the gaps in the market. He fills those gaps, and she creates a company and finds success. And I believe that we all can be founders. It's in our DNA. It is to be human, to create and to build. But why do we have some founders and some not founders? And I want to talk about that a little bit. But I asked ChatGPT to define founders in a single word and make me a word cloud. Just because I want to get clarity on who this founder is, and this is the word cloud. Lots of interesting words up there: grit, creativity, leadership, adaptability. These are all things founders need to be, but I think this describes the journey and not who the founder is. So we still haven't drilled down to who the founder is. So when I started my business and I didn't know what I was doing like most people did, And I didn't have a board of directors. We were supposed to talk about board of directors, but honestly, 99% of founders don't have boards of directors. That's for Fortune 500s and Fortune 1000 companies and companies on the stock exchange. So I joined Vistage. It's a CEO group, and Vistage, they're my board of directors. They keep me accountable. And I think founders need to be kept accountable. They need to find a mechanism for that. And I did. And this was 25 years ago in our Vistage chair for my group. By the way, Vistage in Houston, where I'm from, I think there's 14 chapters or groups. And each group has a chair. And you meet once a month. And you hold each other accountable and you help solve each other's problems. And then you meet with your chair one-to-one once a month. And it's a great system. And they have 2 chapters here in Dubai. So you people in Dubai might give this some serious consideration, especially if you're having trouble staying accountable. But I had my first chair 25 years ago. He was as much of a football coach as he was a business mentor. And at that time, my group was all men. And he said something I never forgot. He said, and you'll pardon my French, he said, "You sons of bitches better get your shit together because you are unemployable." And I remember that. And every day I wake up before I put my feet on the ground, I tell myself I'm unemployed and I better get something done. And I think that describes a founder more than anybody else. Having your act together because you are unemployable. You just can't, not for very long, you can't work for somebody else. That's why you're a founder. And this is getting us closer to who a founder is. And we've also touched on how founders need to be held accountable. So in my business, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, I deal with nothing but founders. I have 25 years of experience dealing with founders. And what I have found, that every single founder has an origin story. And I think now we're getting very close to who a founder is. So what does that mean, to have an origin story? So I would give 3 examples. One, a famous example. So we're going to talk about Elon Musk, because everybody in the world knows who Elon Musk is. He's probably maybe one of the top 5 most recognizable people on the planet Earth, if not beyond. And then we're going to give my example. And then we're going to give an example of one of my clients. And that's what relates to what you see here on the floor. So hang around so you can figure out what this is. So Elon Musk invented PayPal, as I'm sure you all know, and he sold PayPal, and he made a fortune, and he decided to start SpaceX. And he wanted to put cargo into space, and that was the whole reason for SpaceX. And so he sunk his fortune into SpaceX, and he did his first launch, and it was a disaster. Now, he only had enough money for 3 launches, and his fortune was gone. And he had told NASA, had made promises to NASA, and NASA was watching, and he launched the second time, and he had a second disaster. This time, it got off the ground, but didn't survive very long, I think 8 or 10 seconds, and exploded in the air. And he had enough money to do one more launch. And he had a decision to make. Should he shut SpaceX down and save what was left of his fortune, or should he go for it? Well, he's a founder. There was really no choice there. He's going to go for it. And on the 3rd launch, they made it. But now we're going to ask the question, why? Why did he do that? What makes him the founder? What makes him this person that's different from all the other people out there? And we're going to get back to the origin story. So what is Elon Musk's origin story? Well, Elon Musk could read a book in a couple hours and retain 90% of what he read. That's who this guy is. And that doesn't make him a founder, but what it did is he read all these history books, and he read the Quran, and he read the Bible, and he read the Torah, and he read all kinds of other religious texts. He was, at the age of 14, he was in an existential crisis because he didn't understand who we are, or why we're here, and what we're doing. And he needed an answer to that. And then he read, this is AI's version of a 14-year-old Elon Musk. and he read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And it's a philosophical book, but it's done through humor. It's British humor. And he read that book, and he had this realization of just how special humanity is and how much we've gained and how much further we could go. And what he realized is all that history, all that potential could be wiped out in a moment with a meteor strike. And that's the spark that lit into a flame. That's Elon Musk's origin story. We don't have time. I could have done Steve Jobs, and I could have done Richard Branson. I could have gone back in history and done people like Andrew Carnegie, and on and on and on. But even in my own humble way with the founders that I know, they all have origin stories. Something lit the spark where it didn't light the spark with other people. And that's, to me, what a founder is. They take that spark and they turn it into a flame. They basically become unemployable, and they're destined to do what they do. They can only work for themselves. So what it says here is, the flame doesn't flicker in a crisis, it burns brighter. And that's part of the very definition of who I believe a founder is. And let's get over here. And founders create through will by activating what is encoded in human DNA. And this is what I mean. Everybody has that founder gene. But it's just like everybody has a brain, but not everybody uses a brain. Not everybody activates their founder gene. Because I know founders who activate their gene late in life, and Elon Musk was at 14, Steve Jobs was at 23. So it's all there, that potential's there. And the closer you can get to understanding what this means, the more effective a founder you're going to be. But you need to understand who you are. So that phoenix there is my AI representation of the founder gene that we all have. So a little about me. Avela Global, offices in Shanghai, Ho Chi Minh City, Phnom Penh, and Mumbai, and a sales office in Dubai here. How did that happen? My mom never graduated from high school. My dad was a carpenter. I was a BC student. But something ignited my founder gene. So it didn't matter that I wasn't the smartest guy in the room. What mattered is that I found my passion. So this is what we do. Simple idea. We source products in Asia, and we work transparency with our clients and cutting out the opaque middleman. It's a really simple concept. It was the gap in the market that I exploited to make this successful company. And the other thing is we put boots on the ground overseeing every step of the production, including on-site QC, no third-party QC. And we invite our clients to come out and walk the factory floors and look at their stuff. And we believe we don't worry about the clients cutting us out, because if we don't bring value to a situation, then we shouldn't be in the order. We shouldn't be in the order. And I lost. Oh, go forward? No? Uh-oh. This always happens to me. All right, I get more time. Is it this, do you think? So I think I'm just going to go into my origin story. I have interesting graphics to go with it, but maybe we'll catch up with it. So what lit my spark? What made this BC student into a CEO and founder with offices around the globe? And I've been doing this business for 24 years. How did that happen? And I remember when I was 7 years old, it was summer and I was grounded. And my mom was making me dust the house. And I wanted to be outside with my friends, and I was upset. And we get a knock at the door, which was unusual in 1965, because in those days, you left your doors open and neighbors and friends just went in and out all the time. But there was a knock on the door, so that was formal. And that was different. It got my attention. And I went to see who was at the door, and yeah, I'll take it from there. And my mom was talking to a guy in a suit and a hat at the front door. And now we're caught up. So there's my AI version of me and my mom, and there's a man at the front door, and he's wearing a suit. And I thought that was unusual because you only saw a man in a suit on TV. And I'm like, what is this all about? So I'm very curious. And before you know it, that conversation leads to our kitchen table. And this man is talking, this stranger is talking to my mom at the kitchen table. And I'm like, I gotta see what this is about. So I go sit down at the kitchen table, and he's an encyclopedia salesman. And he's telling my mother, who didn't graduate from high school, that if she wanted her children to succeed and go to college, that we needed a set of encyclopedias. And then an amazing thing happened. She took out this piece of paper and she wrote a number and her signature on it. I later found out that's called a check. And she handed it to him. And a couple weeks later, the encyclopedias show up. Now, my dad gets home. My dad's a carpenter. Until literally the very day he passed, he swung a hammer for probably more than 70 years. And my dad was upset because mom's like, I want these kids to go to college. And my dad's view of college was anybody who was a college graduate was an educated fool. And you know, in my old age, I kind of wonder about that sometime. I've met a lot of educated fools in my life. So anyways, I'm thinking, wow, this is important, and I don't want to let anybody down. So the encyclopedias come, and I start to read them. I read them in my room at night, and I would start with A, and I'm 7 years old, and these are like college-level encyclopedias, and I don't understand almost any of it. So I'm sitting there with my dictionary, and it might take me 3 or 4 days to get through a page. But I was getting a better education than I ever did at school. That's kind of where the founder gene starts to kick in. And I learned about polar bears and what they eat, and I learned about different cultures, and I learned about biology, and I learned about volcanoes and dinosaurs and all these amazing things in these encyclopedias. And it took me another year to get to the letter M. And it was August the next year, and I read about a meteor shower. And I thought, wow, that sounds dangerous. I better learn about meteor showers. I understood what rain showers were. And I read about meteor showers, and there was a table. And in that table was predictions of meteor showers for the next 20 years. It told you what time. It told you where you needed to be and what date. And I thought, that's impossible. Nobody can do that. Nobody can look 20 years in the future and tell me to go outside at this certain date, and I'm going to see a meteor shower where I'm going to see meteors streak across the sky at 3 meteors every second. That's just not possible. So I thought, I can verify this. So this happened to be 2 days later after I read this. I got in my sleeping bag, and I laid down outside, and we had nice dark skies. And it was the first time I really noticed the stars in the sky and the Milky Way. All my life, 7 short years, but all my life, and oh my God, look at that, there's the Milky Way. And I was mesmerized, and I'm going through the encyclopedia in my mind, and I'm thinking about all the amazing things I've read about and all the things I'll never see. Because we didn't have money, and there was no way I was ever going to see these things. But I made up my mind before I fell asleep that I would have a bucket list, and at the top of my bucket list was to see a palm tree. See, I was born in Ohio, and we didn't have palm trees. I climbed every tree in the forest next to our house, but how do you climb a palm tree? So I needed to see one of those that looked like a dinosaur tree, and I wanted to see that. So as I fell asleep, the palm tree was on my mind, and I woke up. And there it was, the meteor shower. I had a wind-up alarm clock, and I took it with me, and I set it for 4 a.m, and it rang, and I woke up, and this is a representation of what I saw. And it was magic. And I said, maybe anything is possible. Maybe I really can go see all these things and do all these things that I read in this encyclopedia. I think about this all the time as I'm doing all the stuff you see above. And that's my origin story. And it's like a companion. It stays with me every day of my life. And when you talk to enough founders, you find that they all have origin stories very, very similar to this. I mean, Steven Spielberg's origin story is the same. His dad took him out to the desert to a meteor shower, and now he makes movies. So different interpretation, different DNA, but the same thing. He became, his life changed. He was unemployable. He became a founder. So I want to talk about one of my clients. Her name is Ashley Black. This is our last origin story. And Ashley, when she was a little girl, she told her dad, I want to change the world. And she didn't know how she was going to change the world or why she was going to change the world, but that's what she wanted to do. And as she got older and getting ready for college, she still wanted to change the world. Her father was an engineer, and she said, you're good at math. He said, you're good at math. I'll send you to school to be an engineer. And she became a mechanical engineer, and she wasn't happy because she wasn't changing the world as a mechanical engineer. She could certainly be a mechanical engineer, but she couldn't change the world. And she got her first job in Chicago, and then she ended up in Houston, where I'm from, and got married, had 3 kids, still not changing the world. Got divorced, her world changed, but she wasn't changing the world. Had 3 kids to raise, they're getting to be college age. I had a shoulder injury, and I went to see her in her clinic. Here's her origin story. About 4 years before then, she had a bone disease. And it was eating away at her hip and her femur. And they had to cut that bone disease out, and she needed a hip replacement. And her insurance wouldn't cover it. And she's a working mom, and how is she going to solve that problem? Well, she talked to every doctor she could, and finally a doctor in Houston said, I know this genius surgeon in India. And for 10 cents on the dollar, you can go to India and you can get a hip replaced. It'll be as good or better than any place you can find in the States. So that's what she did. She got on an airplane. She had no idea who she was going to meet. They met her at the airport in a limousine. They took her to this beautiful hospital. And within 3 days, she had a hip replacement. And within 2 weeks, she's back home. Now, her doctor told her that you're going to be in physical therapy for 6 months, and you're not going to be able to get around. And Ashley's like, I can't do that. I've got to support these kids. I've got to bring in income. I can't wait 6 months. I could get fired from my job. She already took all her vacation. So she started thinking about the body like a mechanical engineer. And her father was right. Maybe she can change the world. And what she realized as she studied human anatomy is that we have to be in balance. And when we get out of balance, that's when we have medical problems. And she said, I have trauma on this hip. I need to release pressure on this side so this could come together and heal faster. So she learned about fascia. That's the kind of the skin that goes around the muscle that holds the muscle in its proper place. And so what she did with a drumstick is she found the fascial adhesions in her hip, and she broke them all, and it relieved all the tension up and down her hip, and it lessened the trauma on the other side where her surgery is. And I think I must have done that. I don't know. Oh, here we go. And so now she says, I can change the world because I've learned something through all this. For the very first time, she was ignited. She had that spark, and it turned into a flame. And she opened a clinic, and she was helping athletes because she could work on their bodies, and their warm-up times and their cool-down times were shorter, and they had less injuries because she was breaking their fascial adhesions. And I went to her because I hurt my shoulder, and a friend said, you need to go there and have Ashley do it because you don't need surgery. And she fixed my shoulder, and I was grateful. And she learned what I did, that I make things in Asia. And at the time, this is 14 years ago, it was like $185 an hour to go in there and see Ashley. And she says it's going to take 3 visits. And she fixed my shoulder. But she heard what I did, and she said, this is free. I want to talk to you. And Ashley drew this. It's the actual drawing. And she said, this is a tool that allows people to fix their fascia. If I had this tool, I would have been so much better off. And her idea was this tool could be made for athletes and could prevent injuries, which is what she was doing in her clinic. And there's a whole long story about how she became famous, and Leo DiCaprio was one of her clients and stuff like that. We could spend another 30 minutes on that. But this was the tool that she needed. And she said, can you make this? And I said, sure, I can make that. What would it cost? And I said, well, the molds required, be more than one mold. Molds required would be maybe $25,000. And then to make this, make the actual tool itself that she called the lump buster, to bust up the lumps. We made it, it was black, and that would cost about $8,000. And she said, that's great, I need this tool, but I can't afford it. And I was so grateful that she'd fixed my shoulder, because if I'd had surgery, my shoulder would have never been the same. And she fixed my shoulder. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'll pay for the mold, you pay for the production, so I'm taking the lion's share of the cost. And when you sell enough of these, you pay me back. And the only caveat is that you're my customer for life. And we shook hands on it. And we made a container of these lump busters. And she sold them to everybody she could think of. And I think she had like 5,000 of these things. And in a year's time, she sold about 500. And I thought, I'm never going to get paid back. What a disaster. And then the phone call came. Somebody from the Lakers, one of the A players of the Lakers, I don't remember who it was. It wasn't Kobe Bryant, but it was somebody like that. Scottie Pippen, maybe. Wife called Ashley and said, I was using my husband's lump buster and my cellulite is gone. And ding, ding, ding. She says, I'm selling this to the wrong people. She says, I'm going to make it white. I'm going to call it the Fascia Blaster. I'm going to sell it to women. Next year, she made $7 million. So pretty cool story, right? And I got to be part of that journey. I'm not taking credit for it, but I got to be part of that journey. So this is what it looks like, the Fascia Blaster looks like. And so we've been making this thing for about 12 years. And she wants to take all that she's learned from running this company and go to the next level. And we're in production on the next level. And it looks like that box. And I put it here because if you're really interested in what's going on here, come to our table. We can show you what's the magic inside the box. I think we're delivering our first 1,200, and she's probably sold 5,000 of these right now, and it's going viral. It's a good problem to have. We can't catch up with the orders right now because we have to scale, and it's very, very complicated and blah, blah, blah. But I think the point is that stories like Ashley show that we're all connected in some way, and my journey fuels her, and her journey fuels me. And that's why we're here. That's why we're at this conference. And that's why founders should get together. That's why they should tell their origin stories. And that's why they should look together for the gaps that they share and find a way to cooperate and solve those next level problems. And to me, that's what a founder is. That's who a founder is. And it's also important to know where your power comes from so that when you need it the most, like Ashley did when she had her injury, and I had a medical condition. I had a 0 chance of surviving this cancer 15 years ago, but I'm still here because I knew where my power came from, because I knew my origin story. It's really powerful stuff because you need to be able to access it. So there's the flame, there's the idea, and in many cases, the flame ignites when you're a child. So my thesis is that we're all born a perfect child of God. We're absolutely perfect when we're born. And the complications of life and society and school and situations, good and bad, start to shut down this beautiful inner child inside of us. But founders have a relationship with their inner child. That's what makes them special. And when that inner child is the connection between you and the divine. And this is where inspiration comes from. It doesn't come from the next language learning model. It comes from here. And this is why I don't worry about AI, because AI is not going to get this connection. So when you nurture your inner child and you codify your origin story, it leads to vision and innovation and makes you a founder. And this is what I believe a founder is. So acknowledge your inner child. It's your best and most trusted friend that you can ever have. Develop your origin story. And people kind of know their origin story and they can kind of talk a little bit about it. But what I'd like you all to do is to write it down and then wait a week and write it down again and wait a week. And you'll find that you can just keep adding more and more to it. More and more memories come back and it makes more and more sense. And when you can communicate your origin story to your team, you can inspire them. So from my experience, this answers the question, who is the founder? So, 3 challenges. Personal challenge. Reflect on your origin story. Write it down and share it with your team. And with your team, see what gaps that you can find that you can bridge. Could be new services, could be new products, but it's the thing that's going to sustain your company, the next thing you need. You know, you have a product and products have life cycles, or you have services and they have life cycles and you have to be doing the next thing. That's the founder's responsibility. You're going to get that inspiration through your inner child and your origin story. That, to me, is the formula. And then I want you to take a risk. Do something that you know has to get done that you've been avoiding that's going to be really, really hard. And work with your team on it. And commit to it. And if you succeed, great. If you fail, that's okay too. That's how you learn. Fail fast, fail small, but it's okay to fail. Then regroup, but don't dim your flame. Uh-oh. Oh, we just have one more. Yeah, bet on yourself and make it happen. That's what founders do. This is so weird. Okay, and then I want you to do something here at the conference. I want you to do a community building. I want you to connect with other founders, and I want you to start having that origin story conversation. And you're going to find that you're going to bond with people, and you're going to find the things that are similar. And if you're not going to do something with that person, they're going to know somebody who would love to talk to you. So I would love you to really share your origin story. Look for those gaps. And where you can find gaps in common, you just might have a partner. And try to see what sparks you can ignite at this conference. So working with founders for 24 years, the common denominator is the origin story. And that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. So I don't know if we have time for questions.